Good evening and happy March, everyone. If you're located in West Michigan or really anywhere in the Midwest, you know we are celebrating the coming of March. The weather's getting nicer, the days are getting longer, and we're so excited to be able to really enjoy everything there is here in Michigan. So my name is Shannon Schans, and I serve as the Assistant Director of Applied Learning at Hope. My work gives me the opportunity to work with your students as they learn to connect the things that they've experienced in the classroom with the real world opportunities that they've had outside of the classroom through things like internship, volunteerism, or research. I work as a member of the Boerigter Center for Calling and Career. There, we all get to help to assist students who are working toward calling and career readiness. Throughout the pandemic, we have been doing our part to mitigate the spread of COVID-19 by working remotely. In that case, we have been busy running large-scale programming, career fairs, and classes, along with offering one-on-one appointments, all virtually, and we have been so thrilled by continued student engagement. It's really no surprise that in times like these, students are continuing to ask big questions about their purpose, their career prospects, or their graduate school plans. It's been our blessing to walk alongside them throughout it all. In terms of this evening sessions, we are really excited for you to relax and really just listen in tonight. The panelists and I are excited to have the opportunity to share our own insights along with data-driven information about how your student can discern, prepare, and pursue for their next best step. While we will be the only ones here to have our video turned on, you can still ask questions below. In fact, your questions are some of the most important content of the night. So below you should see a Q&A box. Please feel free to pop your questions in there, and throughout the night, we're gonna work through them. The questions that are asked will be public for all to see, but there will be occasions when we may answer them in a private message back to you. But others that we see popping up several times will take time to answer for the big group. Especially toward the end of our time tonight, we'll spend the last 15 minutes really diving into those questions. So please, if something comes up that you have a follow-up question on, or something you wish we would cover, or even something that might be outside of what we're covering tonight, please feel free to pop it in that Q&A box. And if we can't answer the question, we can certainly connect you with someone who can. In terms of content for tonight, we plan to cover topics that include general information about vocation, like what it is, early and mid Hope College student experiences, like experiential learning information. And finally, we'll dive into career planning ideas for your students, like what are some helpful strategies for job searching, even in the midst of a pandemic. In order for us to cover what's most relevant for you, we would like to start by getting a sense of who's joining us tonight. So to do that, you are going to see on your screen a poll pop up, and there's actually going to be 2 questions. And once they pop up, I think they will. We've got geniuses. Oh, there they are. Please go ahead and answer that question. What class year is your Hope College student? And as we see those poll numbers come in, it'll just help us get a better sense of who's here. Is this a group of people who has all freshmen? And so we should really focus on freshman appropriate information. Or is this information that we need to be talking about for seniors who are all thinking about either graduate school or pursuing jobs? And in just a minute, we'll let that question go, and we'll go to our second question, the second of 2. So this is it. This is your time to shine. You want to go ahead and pull up that second poll question. Oh my gosh, thank you for the results. Okay, so this is actually really interesting. Today we have kind of a really nice split between first-year students, sophomores, juniors, and seniors. Quite an even spread, which is actually great news because we have really good information for every year at Hope College. So I'm excited about that. So let's go ahead and pull up that second question. I believe it should come up any second. Maybe. We wait anxiously. There it is. Okay. What do you want to learn tonight? Like if you were in charge of the content and this was you get to tell us right now, what, if you could pick from any of these, what is it that you want to learn most about? What would you choose? We've only limited you to one. And the good news is you're going to learn a little about all of it, but this will help us know, again, what to spend the most time on. And we'll take another maybe 5 seconds for you to enter your answers. And my guess is, based on the fact that you're all here representing all the classes at Hope, we might have a really even spread here too. All right, if we can get the answers to this poll, let's see what it says. There it is. Wow, this is incredible. Okay, well, the good news is, a very nice spread. The good news is we get to talk about all of these things, just like I said, and we're even going to add in what is vocation, because it is a really important element of what your students are hearing at Hope College, the way that we kind of approach our conversations. It's absolutely will include vocational information. So we get to talk about all of it tonight. Thank you so much for this. Let's see if I can close this. Okay. Well, thank goodness. You are not expected to just listen to me all night long, Few. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to the panelists who will be joining me. First, Dr. Ryan White is joining us, and he's the Associate Dean for Academic Advising and Applied Learning, and also works as a member of the BCCC team. Ryan began working at Hope in 2013. He is responsible for directing academic advising and the first-year seminar program. He also works to help students successfully transition to college, discern their strengths and interests, navigate academic planning. Really, Ryan is a gifted student advocate and always working to align students' education with a sense of purpose and life direction. Within our conversation tonight, among many other things, I'm sure Ryan is going to help us to define vocational discernment on Hope's campus. So welcome, Ryan. Next, I want to introduce Yoli Vega, who serves as Senior Academic and Career Advisor within the Boerigter Center. Since starting at Hope over 20 years ago, Yoli has had the opportunity to work in the offices of admissions, multicultural life and residential life, as well as the TRIO Upward Bound program and the Phelps Scholar program. Yoli has experience in the classroom, having taught various courses, as well as serving as the advisor to the First Gen Student Union Group. Yoli works tirelessly to ensure calling and career readiness for all students by offering one-on-one appointments and through her engagement in the classroom. Yoli is here as our early undergraduate and Hope experiences expert with the ability to answer questions about major and career discernment related to identity development and experiential learning. With that, I welcome Yoli. Finally, joining us tonight is Associate Dean for Career Development, Dale Austin, who is also a key member of the BCCC team. Dale has been at Hope College for over 3 decades and brings those years of experience and wisdom with him into each of his student appointments. Dale has been in your shoes as a parent of a Hope student, and he really works to make sure that your son or daughter feels as prepared for career success just as he did with his own children. He is an expert in job search strategies, interview preparation and practice, the graduate school application process, and job market analytics. In a time like this, there's no better resource for our Hope students who are preparing to move on from backpack to briefcase than Dale Austin. With that, welcome to Dale Austin. I believe, can you guys all, yes, hello, welcome. I want to kick it off just by giving us a brief opportunity to share a little bit about ourselves. So I want to just ask Ryan to start us off by telling us a little bit about your own vocational story. And with that, I will also ask Yoli and Dale to do the same once Ryan's done.
Thank you, Shannon. Thank you, everyone. I'm so happy to be here tonight. This content is so fun. So I have a great time with this. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my story. I'm actually going to mention a couple things about college. When I was a college student, I went to college for 2 things. I went to play soccer and I went to be with my girlfriend. We were going to the same school. 1 month into college, injury and uncertainty left me with neither of those two things. And I kind of searched through all kinds of college activities and majors for guidance and direction. And I kind of had a lot of anxiety and depression. And after attending 4 different institutions, I eventually graduated from a small college with degrees in theology, music, and psychology. But I never really felt at home in my colleges. And I also had a pretty dramatic conversion to Christianity during this time, which is a big part of my story. Well, since I went from feeling depressed and uncertain and anxious to feeling very found and called by God during these collegiate years, I assumed that I should therefore be called to some sort of religious life. So I'm like, well, I feel different. I feel changed. I was kind of depressed. I found God. Now I feel hopeful. And so I decided I'm going to go be a professional religious person. So I went to seminary, went to Fuller Seminary in Pasadena. And I worked, and I did some other roles, but I worked as a worship pastor for a couple years. And I found I didn't resonate with a lot of the work as a worship pastor. And I particularly was anxious doing some of the technical musical things that I just didn't quite have the right skill set for. And this delightful elder who kind of saw my fit not being quite perfect and saw some of the anxiety it brought, he handed me this book, Parker Palmer's Let Your Life Speak. And Curtis, who handed me this book, had some insights for me, and Parker Palmer had some insights for me. Oh, Shannon's got it too. And I realized, well, Parker Palmer said, God wants us to consider how he's made us. That's part of the calling. What are our strengths? What are our gifts? How are we supposed to be responsible with those things? This is a message your students hear from us. Like, they hear this from day one. They hear this in orientation. They hear this in the summer before they arrive. But I'd never heard language like that. My assumption was, I'm called, I'm found, therefore I have these things I have to do. And there was this kind of light bulb moment. It's one of the most formative moments of my life where I realized I have these gifts woven into me by God, and God wants me to recognize them, understand them, and utilize them. And so I was like, okay, well, what are my gifts then? And so I started looking at the roles and the professional work and the other roles in my life that I'd had. And it was kind of easy to spot. I was like, oh, I like teaching. I like counseling. I like coaching. And in all the things I've done as a pastor, as a soccer coach, as a high school guidance counselor, as a student advisor at a university, I was always a teacher and a pastor and a strategic thinker. Those are some of my gifts. But it drew me to want to go back to school. I studied educational psychology and got another degree, and I focused research on identity development. And since then, I've found my professional home in using my gifts in teaching, advising, and coaching students in college contexts and here at Hope College. So that's a little bit about my professional and strengths kind of journey. I of course have other roles in life that I'm called to, as I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm a neighbor, I'm other things. But for tonight, I wanted to focus on my strengths and career themes. So thanks.
Thank you, Ryan. Yeah, a shared love for Parker Palmer and Let Your Life Speak. I think we all, and all 4 of us, love it. Yoli, I would love to hear from you as well. Hi, Yoli.
Hi,
Please
Shannon.
tell us a little bit about your vocational journey.
I would be glad to. Thanks so much for the opportunity to be here tonight with you. So I am actually a Hope grad, born and raised here in Michigan. And I chose Hope College because it was close to home. And as a first generation college student, I really didn't know what the process was about in terms of how to get there and what the experience would be like. What I did know was that I loved teaching. I was the kid who would line up her stuffed animals and have school with them and do teaching. And so I knew that was in my heart. I just always loved being able to come alongside people, help them, support them, and thought in my mind, the best way I could do that was to be a teacher. So I came to Hope and I prepared for a career in secondary education in Spanish and English. And when I graduated, I was actually very grateful and thankful that I was hired by Holland Public Schools to teach 8th and 9th grade English. And I did that for a couple of years. as I was going through that experience, I also realized that being back in the school system was different than what I was anticipating it would be. And so an opportunity came up to work at Hope College in the admissions office. And quite honestly, it was something that I had never, ever thought of. I just thought I will be a teacher, an educator in a classroom till I retire. And when the opportunity came up and to be here, I started interacting with students and families as they were learning about Hope College and got to be a part of that journey. This year, I'm actually celebrating 30 years of employment at Hope College. And I'm very grateful for that milestone because during that time, the time that I've been here at Hope, I've actually worked in admissions, in Res Life, in student development, in a living learning program, different things that Shannon mentioned at the beginning. And I didn't realize it at first, but probably the common theme that I see through all of it is that I never stopped being an educator. I was an educator at the core, and how that looked was just different. And honestly, in ways that I never even thought or imagined. If someone had told me I would be talking with students about exploring majors and careers, I just would not have even known that that was a thing you could do. So I'm really grateful for the opportunity to be here as a Hope grad, as a staff member. I do get to be in the classroom, and I'm also a Hope parent. So I have a student who is finishing up at Hope. So Hope has been a good place for me, and ways that it's helped me grow in ways that I never even dreamed or thought possible. So glad to be with you tonight.
Thank you, Yoli. I love that your story includes like an element of finding something that you don't want to do in order to get you to the place that you do want to be. So it's very common. I love it. I want to welcome Dale Austin to our screen so he can share a bit about himself as well. There he is. Hi,
Well,
Dale.
thank you, Shannon. Hi, how are you tonight, Shannon? Good. So welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us. As I think about my own journey, and Shannon shared that I've been at Hope just a few years, I think really back to my college days when I was studying history, psychology, and religion, and really just loved learning. Didn't really think about what am I going to do and what direction might I take. And so, one of the directions that I thought about seriously was going on to graduate school. And so I studied theology in Toronto. And after my first year, really didn't feel that was a good fit. Loved the study, but was really having questions about connecting to what I would be doing next. And so I basically then from there looked at going to Michigan State, where a good friend of mine, Dave, had gone, and really what was driving this was this thirst to understand how do people make decisions about what they're going to do. And so I studied career development, I studied personal counseling, and then worked at Alma College in the Career Center there, and really found the opportunity to integrate my interest, my passion, working with individuals, helping them figure out their direction, as well as create innovative programs to really make an impact on their lives. And so over the time I've been at Hope, I've been very fortunate to be able to do a number of those things. And it's just great to be with you tonight. And we're looking forward to sharing more of our perspective and how we can help serve your students.
Well, thank you all again for sharing that about your own individual journeys. And I'm hoping that as parents are listening, they're able to kind of pick out things, my kid is going through that. And some of this I hope is reassuring for parents who are listening in tonight. Some of what we started to talk about really clearly involves vocation. And I think it's really important that we begin just with a clear understanding. So Ryan, I'm hoping you can share with us, tell us what Hope might define as vocation or vocational discernment.
Yes, I have the pleasure of answering the question nobody wants answered. But actually, it's a great fit for me because I don't mind at all. And the reason we're still talking about it is because it sets the stage for everything else we're going to talk about tonight. I promise we're going to get into specifics and tips and programming, But part of our why and part of the heartbeat of everything we do is the answer to this question. It'll be probably our most theological question of the evening, but just bear with me for a minute, and we'll introduce it. And we introduce this language to students as well. So first I want to just a terminology note. You'll hear us using the language vocation. You'll hear us using the language calling. We're using those interchangeably. We're pulling off of this Latin word root vocare, meaning to call. So we mean those as the same thing. So if that's helpful to know, in some contexts, it refers to applied trades like vocational school, auto shop, woodwork, electrician, those kinds of things. And many Christians also refer to it in that sense of meaning a job as well. So, but there's lots of ways to think about what vocation calling means. Just like there is like, what is love? Please define love for us, Ryan. Well, that'd be a long conversation. We'll try to keep it shorter, but I'm going to talk about 2 ways that Hope talks with your students about vocation. One of the ways is theological, drawing on Christian history, following the Reformations in the 1500s. Calling previously was associated with like a call to a religious life. Like, should I be a monk? Should I be a priest? Should I be a nun? But throughout this Reformation period, there became a separation where there was this understanding that there can be a general and a particular calling. So this is a theological and Christian historical distinction. General calling is simply the call to the life of faith, the call to the life of the Christian faith. The faith, the virtues, faith, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, gentleness, the call to love your neighbor. Mother Teresa puts it this way, and I quote, "We have been created for greater things, not just to be a number in the world, not just to go for diplomas and degrees, or this work and that work. We've been created in order to love and to be loved." And you can do that kind of Christian calling, the call to the life of faith, in any job or virtually any job. And then this other distinction of particular calling. This is the call to a specific life role or life occupation, right? If we're all called to love our neighbor, if we're all called, even in a secular sense, to certain human values and ways of being, well, how are you called uniquely to be different than your neighbor? So that's kind of one way we talk about calling. It's kind of Christian theological context. And the other is what you're looking at right now on the screen. This is more of like sometimes we use the language discernment. We just mean thinking about, reflecting on something. And this is our vocational or calling discernment framework. We introduce students to this in their first year, in their freshman year. And we talk about these kind of intersecting circles where strengths and talents, those things you're good at, those things you have potential at, interact with your interests and passions, those things that make you come alive, those things that draw your attention, that occupy your mind, that take your money, that take your time. And then needs and context. What are the needs of the community, and what are the opportunities of the place you find yourself in right now, in this moment, as well as in the future, but right now as well. And where these things come together, we talk about that as a place of calling, and where someone might be called to in this moment. Kind of a short version is this common quote from Frederick Buechner: "Vocation is the place where our deep gladness meets the world's deep need." It kind of summarizes this diagram. So that's kind of 2 approaches to that language of calling and vocation. I'll leave it there and just sum up as this: whether you're talking about the kind of religious historical piece or this more kind of contemporary thinking place of intersecting thoughts, the big idea is that there's this assumption that we're working with, that all of us and your students are called to a life of meaning and purpose.
Thank you, Ryan. Lovely. As we think about kind of that framing of vocation, Yoli, I'm hoping you can help us expand. How does vocational discernment, or thinking about what a student's vocation might be, how does that relate to major discernment, choosing a major, and career discernment, that kind of long-term view? And then I wonder, on top of that, it's a 2-parter, what are some of the services that you actually do to help students kind of accomplish that work?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there can definitely be a correlation or a connection between the 2 of them. Major discernment would be what is that topic of study that they want to be able to focus on as a Hope student, whether that be major or minor, and how does that align with their interests and their skills and their talents and abilities. And then being able to use that information to say, okay, if this is a foundation for me, how can I use that in the future? And being at a liberal arts college really provides students with a solid foundation to be able to go in a variety of different directions. When I think about meeting with students and showing them different career possibilities that connect to different majors, probably 9 times out of 10, students are surprised at the options. And there are things on that list that they didn't realize, again, were things or opportunities. So I think that's one of the biggest differences that I see, Shannon, between the major discernment and the career discernment. Sometimes there's connections and sometimes it can go in a different direction. In terms of what we offer here at Hope, what I really appreciate is that it's very much a process, and we definitely come alongside students as they think about what are those next best steps. And when we use language like that with the students, that can help reduce some of the stress that they might be feeling of, I need to have it all figured out in my first semester. We will come alongside them and provide them with the tools, with experiences, with the opportunities they need to keep exploring that. So a couple of things that definitely come to mind is they're able to continue exploring vocation and calling through our curriculum. Again, being at a liberal arts school, through their first year seminar, through their senior seminar, they can keep exploring those interests. Shannon actually teaches a phenomenal course called Second Seminar, where students really talk about how do I design a life that matters. So they can continue to do that through their curriculum and what they're studying at Hope. And then places like the Boerigter Center come alongside them to offer some real tangible ways that they can keep building on that. So it may be talking through their Clifton Strengths Assessment. What are their top 5 themes and how do they live into that? Where have they seen that in their lives already? That's always an eye opener for students when they start putting those pieces together. I think another favorite tool that we've started using over the past 2 years is something called the Pathway U assessment. And so if you've not asked your student about that, please do. My colleague, Amy Freehafer, and I are 2 of our team members who can help debrief that with students. And it will ask them about their interests, values, workplace preferences, and personality. And then it will actually use that information to offer them some career matches. And it's a great place to start where they can see what majors at Hope connect to that. They can also see what the job market is like. If I take this title of health educator and I do a search in Michigan, I'm going to see that there are places that are hiring for that role right now. So those are just some of the ways that students can explore while they're on that journey. And it's definitely a journey. And that's something that we often remind them of in the best way possible. Let's just talk about what those next best steps are. So feel free to add anything else, anyone?
Yoli, you covered so much. You are a wealth of knowledge, as always. But what I love that you kind of hit on is really that word journey, because very rarely, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, what we see is not necessarily a student starts at A, goes directly to B, moves on to C, and then D, it's perfect, right? The process really is kind of down, around, all over the place, and has a lot of trial and error built into it. There will be things that your students experience that they discover they are not interested in, they're not good at it, they don't like it. And that is part of the process. And thinking about things like that as we kind of work with students daily, Yoli and Dale, from the perspective of a parent, I can imagine, I've not been in that situation quite yet, but from the perspective of a parent, what did you experience from your own kids going through this? And maybe what are some recommendations that you could give to fellow parents as they see their own kids going through this process at Hope?
So Yoli, would you like to start or would you like me to? Thank you. 3 of my children, all 3 of my children attended Hope, had very different experiences, very good experiences. One studied history, one studied mechanical engineering, and one studied social work. So they had really different paths. And frankly, even as they were looking at colleges, I was not involved. My wife, Carol, took them to different colleges. I tried to pull back as much as possible because of my role at the college. through their experience, I was intentional about not reaching out to them. They knew where my office was on campus. If they wanted help, they would come. And on occasion they did. So there's really a balancing act to providing support and encouragement and reinforcement, because these are challenging years at times. And sometimes students are faced with some self-doubt, some questions about direction, about who they are. Ryan talked about identity development issues. He shared his own journey. And so I think the best thing that you can do, or at least from my own experience, is be available, be as supportive as possible. When they're calling and expressing frustration, concern, empathize with them, support them, offer ideas, but don't be overly directive, because in my experience as a parent, once you go too directive, they may then go a different direction. And so there's that balancing act, but just so that they know you really care. And data suggests that you as parents are still their number one influencer in their lives. It doesn't feel like that a lot of times, but it's true. And so just a few thoughts.
Thanks, Dale. So I have one son, and he is a senior at Hope. And in addition to what Dale said, I would add really encouraging our students to utilize the resources that are available to them on campus and the people who are there. I have often heard students say, I really want to be at a liberal arts college to be able to connect with my professors. And then they never go talk to their professors. And so really our faculty and staff are an amazing resource. And we value these conversations, not just because it's a job or part of our responsibilities, but to be able to come alongside them and see that growth. I was thinking of my own son and the number of appointments he has had with staff members from our team, from exploring majors and careers to meeting with Dale about a job search to internships. And again, I've often taken that back roll tool like Dale has shared, just to be able to provide support and say, have you talked to so-and-so, or what about this? Have you thought about that? One example that has really meant a lot to me this semester is that my son has actually been mentored by a Hope faculty member, and he has never had a class with that faculty member. But that for me is a really beautiful example of the way that faculty and staff invest in our students and want the best for them and want to be able to come alongside them. So those would be some of the things that come to mind. Just really encourage them to use the resources, whether that's faculty, staff, or things that we offer at the Boerigter Center.
Thank you, guys. You may have seen me taking notes. I have a kiddo who's 2 years away. The notes. Okay, so as we imagine a student that is working with the Boerigter Center, working with faculty, discerning interests, strengths, context, all of those things that Ryan mentioned earlier, and they're now stepping into the process of major discernment, exploring a major and declaring a major. Ryan, can you tell us a little bit about what that experience is like for students? What can they expect? What is a normal experience for students as they declare a major and then begin the process of study within a major?
Well, it's varied, as you might imagine, right? With varied interests, and while most students don't come on that linear path, like Shannon was saying earlier, some do. Some know from a young age what they want to do, and their major is lined up with their career, and they have a plan, and they come, and we help them execute their plan, and it works beautifully. And that happens with some of our students, of course. But many of our students come with a major and end up changing it. Many come undecided. To re-reference something Yoli kind of already mentioned, our curriculum is designed so that most of our majors don't have to be, they don't have a bunch of stuff you got to do right at the beginning of your career. Most of our majors, you can graduate in 4 years if you start them in sophomore or even junior year for a lot of them. So there's space woven into our curriculum. And we have conversations just like this. And we start it in first year seminar. So we start talking about major exploration. Most of our academic departments have departmental advising sessions, so students can go and learn from each department on what it's like to be a student in those departments. But also sometimes we just got to give some courage to students. So we have these resources, we've got tools, we've got Pathway U that Yoli referenced. But I usually tell students, once you're about 50% sure, I kind of want, first I give them permission to not be sure. But once you're about 50% sure, why don't you go ahead and declare a major and get into it? Because there's no way like getting into something to determine whether or not it's a good fit for you. And we use this word reflection sometimes, right? Vocational reflection or reflection papers in classes. And reflection is just considering something for further understanding. So if students are going to try to find a good fit for an academic major, they need to get into it a little bit. They need to go to that department. They need to take some classes. They need to talk to faculty members, which is why once they kind of start having an interest, we encourage them to go to those meetings or declare a major or take an introductory 100 level course in those areas, knowing that even if that doesn't end up being the area they want to major in, our curriculum has enough room in most instances where they can have that experience and then try another avenue.
Thank you. I'm like learning as we're going. Thank you. I want to talk to Dale a little bit about just the climate for seniors right now and thinking about how, after a student has declared their major and potentially they've done various experiential learning, like maybe they've done an internship, they're becoming prepared for their next best step out of hope. And in this question, let's assume it's job exploration. What are some trends that you're seeing, some advice that you're giving to our seniors? How are they kind of preparing through those experiential learning opportunities for what's next?
Sure. That's a great question. I think as you think about what's next, students really want to think about, especially seniors, four somewhat sequential issues. And the beauty of it is, and our panelists have been great in talking about the resources of Boerigter and hope in general, is that we have resources to address all four of these. And the first is really developing what I call a sense of career focus. How do you envision using your study in philosophy and communication or a different, whatever your majors might be? And if it's unclear, we have great staff like Yoli and Amy that can walk with you and help you clarify that. It's never too late. And so that's important. So develop a sense of career focus. I think second, get your support materials ready. Cover letter, resume, if appropriate, portfolio. And again, we have resources that can help with that, online as well as one-on-one sessions. Third is have a plan for how am I going to find a job? By when do I want to have a job? What geographic area? What type or types of roles and in what types of organizations? And again, for many students, that's a big question mark. And so the key would be set up a meeting. Dale's a nice guy. He'd love to sit down with you. And all you need to do is know, I'm a senior. I don't know even what to ask. I've been through this many years. I know the questions. I know the issues. We can develop a plan. And the fourth step, probably the most important of the four steps, is practicing and preparing for the interview. Because what happens in the interview plays a huge role in one's success. And most of us going into interviews are nervous. We don't want to muck up. And so we have staff like Yoli and other staff, myself included, that work with students on preparing for interviews so they can go in and hopefully put their best foot forward. It's no secret that we're in a pandemic. It's had a major impact on the economy. And Shannon's first question really is, in some senses, indirectly aimed at that. Like, what are you telling students? And the key is that you can't control the job market. I can't control, I wish I could, the job market. You can control the actions and steps that you take to be ready. And we have a great alumni network of over several thousand students in the Hope College Connection. We have LinkedIn resources and great coaching to help with that. The key is to focus on what you have control over, use the staff that are eager to work with you, and recognize that our services don't go away. You graduate in May, we're still here in June, July, and August, and next year. We'll work with you at any point until you're in a position where you're feeling successful in what you've wanted to pursue.
I appreciate those kind of step-by-step thoughts, because I think too that's something that students really respond to. Tell me what to do, right? And so as parents are hearing at home, and maybe you're thinking at home, if you have a student who is in this situation, those are great action steps that you can be taking. Dale, talk to us just really briefly before we step into questions that some of our parents on the call had. I would love to hear, like, sometimes we talk a lot about calling in that first, second, third year, and I never want seniors to forget about calling too. So how do we talk to, or how can a student still continue thinking about calling or vocation as they enter maybe their first job out of college, something maybe they didn't anticipate stepping into?
Sure. Sure. And this ties to what Ryan has talked about, and what each of us work with students on, is that importance of reflection, of really getting a sense of who you are, what your gifts are, what you're really passionate about doing, gaining experiences, whether through volunteerism, through internships, through research, whatever the path might be, where you can have those experiences, reinforce those interests and directions, and then knowing how to present that. And it's never separated necessarily. It's not like I'm going to put calling over here, now I've got to find a job. We need to look at it in an integrated way, because if we put it on the shelf and we say, you know, I've got to go after this because that's where their jobs are, and I really can't integrate what I sense a deep call of serving or doing whatever, then you're not going to last very long, typically, in that first job, because you're going to really get a sense of lack of meaning, a lack of purpose, and that's going to impact your performance. And so we always want to be asking ourselves the question, how do I see myself? What are my strengths? Reflect on it. There are staff to help you with that. And then what does that mean as I look for work? And then formulating really good questions through the interview process so that we can find those environments that will really feed that sense of who you are.
Thank you, guys. I want to make sure we save enough time to answer some of these really incredible questions that are coming in from our parents watching. So this first one, I would like each of you to offer just quick 10, 15 seconds. But the first question for each of you is, if you could recommend one thing that students should do each school year in connection with the Boerigter Center, what would it be? It's one thing each year. Yoli, you can start.
I would actually go to one of the appointment types that we offer, and that's exploring majors and careers, because with that tool, Pathway U, that we use, I meet with students who are first year students. I've met with students in the past couple of weeks who are seniors, and I've met with alumni, and they all grow and benefit just from being able to say their thoughts out loud and look at the results together. We talk through those. So I would say that's an appointment they could make every year, whether they know their major or not. So I would encourage that.
Ryan, how about you? What's one
I'll
thing?
say year one, take our Pathway U assessment. Year two, do some informational interviews, getting in contact with alums through our Hope College connection. Year three, have an internship or two. And year four, begin to prepare for your career with interview prep with Dale Austin.
Well said, Ryan. I echo it. We're short of time. And I just say, you know, the key word, initiative, the key word, initiative, because things change.
Yeah.
Sometimes it impacts confidence. And so, and to what Yoli said about our resources and faculty and staff eager to work with your son or daughter, taking the initiative to ask the questions, to get the resources, to get on the right path.
And what you said earlier, Dale, really resonated with me, that sometimes they don't even have to know what question to ask, just that they have a question, right? Like, oh no, who can I talk to? You can talk to people at the Boerigter, even if we're not the right office to kind of help in whatever situation they're in, we can help get them to the people who can help. So absolutely. Okay, let's jump to another question. What do we do if a student changes their mind and wants to go in a totally different direction from what they had planned on. Let's assume this is maybe sophomore year, or maybe give different examples. Like Yoli, what would you do for a sophomore year student? Ryan or Dale, what would you do for a junior or senior?
Yeah, for a sophomore student, again, beginning with that conversation of why their interests have changed, what is it about the potential area that they're thinking about? Has it been a class that they took that they really got excited about? And then we can actually access one of the tools that Hope offers through the registrar's office, which is DegreeWorks, because that gives us a good way to look at what credits have they earned already that are general education related. If they were to change majors, how many semesters do they have to complete the credits for that major? So that's a real tangible step that we can definitely look at. And then also, like Ryan said, getting them connected to the faculty from that department so they can have those conversations and explore further. That would be one.
Now let's say you've got a second semester junior changing his mind. What do we do? What do you tell him?
I actually think the process is going to be almost the same, whether it's freshman through junior. And Yoli are already articulated it. First, we're going to like dig into why. So like, well, what happened? What changed? It might be a newly discovered interest, or in junior and senior year, sometimes it's panic. And it's not really an interest change. It's just uncertainty that causes some panic that can feel like other things. So first, we'll just really get into the why. If back in that freshman sophomore, I would, if it's at that early, I know that you're asking me to do the junior, but if it's that early, I'm going to congratulate them. We often assume major change is a bad thing, and major change, and sometimes folks even in higher education think, oh, we got to get everyone to declare their major earlier, they'll do better in college. The research is actually, a new study just came out on like 5,000 students. There's no like retention change. People who continue on at college toward their degree in freshman through junior year, whether or not someone's a declared major. And in fact, people who change their major have a slight uptick in progressing forward. So there's no problem with kind of this question of major uncertainty or major change. But if we're second semester junior, or if we're in the senior year, then I'm going to, as Yoli noted, look at how do we make sure they get a degree and get done on time if that's a high priority, which it is for most students. They might be surprised that in some instances, they're actually still able to change to certain majors that have fewer requirements, and they may have some requirements that were met through their general education courses. So there may even still be some other options, and we would use this tool called DegreeWorks that looks at degree requirements, as Yoli mentioned, to look through and sift through that. But if there's kind of staring down the end and there isn't time to change and it's a high priority, then I would just recommend elevating that priority of earning the degree. There's lots of life and change that can happen after that, even if you realize toward the end of your college experience that maybe there would have been a better or more perfect major fit.
Yeah, I want to give a plug too for experiential learning, because I remember very clearly being in a similar situation as a student myself all those years ago, where sometimes clearly it's critical for students to graduate with a degree. We care about that. We know you care about that. But sometimes students imagine that I must graduate with a political science degree in order to go to law school, when in fact there is wiggle room. You can very often find opportunity in a lot of areas based not necessarily solely on the type of degree you get, but rather the kind of rich experiences and skill sets you're able to develop through experiential learning, whether that's internship or research or volunteerism. So very often when we work with students in those late stages of school who are interested in changing their mind, we make sure they're building skills and the ability to articulate how those skills match up with what their future goals are as well. So that's my plug.
One other thing I'll add, Shannon, that I think Yoli, Dale, and Ryan, and Shannon would all show students if they come with this question. The Boerigter Center has a resource called "What Can I Do with a Major In?" And it shows students all of the different themes of work from different majors And it even shows students specific current jobs that graduates from those majors are currently occupying out in a variety of fields. And it's surprising how varied the work can be even among particular majors.
Just one quick stat, Shannon. Hope students on average will typically change their intended area of study 2 to 3 times. So that's what we see. That's normal. And we're here to help with that process.
I love that you answered that question, Yoli, because it was on my list. So thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, to normalize those kinds of experiences, it's a sign of growth in a lot of students that they're able to kind of decide or discern that their steps might be different than what they had imagined when they're 18. And so I know as a parent that that's a scary thing, because what we want for them is to be okay. But students, we work with students all the time who are okay, even having changed their major 2 and 3 times. I have one kind of specific question, and I think we hit on some of it, but I want to make sure I read it. It says, my senior has really been struggling with what he can do with his German and communications majors. He shared there weren't any jobs that seemed to check both boxes. He's very anxious about not working in a career that resonates with him when he graduates. Are there steps that, I mean, and I think we can insert different majors into communications and German. There are many students who are like, I want this kind of work associated with my degree. Ryan mentioned a resource that I want you to mention again. What can I do with a major in? But are there other things that we would recommend for students in this situation?
I know the student. I've connected with him. He was involved with one of our recent workshops, preparing for our fair workshop, and we talked about right on the workshop his areas of interest. I threw out some specific areas, and I also encouraged him to set up an appointment with me. I think he's got great potential. We had a very good conversation, and I think basically we look at values, which we talked about, and I think that yeah, just I would encourage him, and I can I know the student. I can reach out to him with an email anonymously. I won't reference anything tonight with any questions, and just say I know you raised these questions at last week's workshop. Happy to sit down with you. Sometimes a little nudge is helpful to get the process started. But that's specifically for him. I'm sure other panelists have other ideas about how to approach this question.
Hey, Dale, actually, I want to chime in, but throw it back to you. I'm wondering, just kind of as the case for an example, almost in the theme of what can I do with a major in, could you talk about, in your experience with recent graduates, what do you see some of our communication graduates, some of our language graduates, some of the work they tend to gravitate to after?
Sure. Yeah. Our language graduates really can go in a variety of directions. Many of them get teacher certification and teach, for example, particularly in Spanish, but also in other areas. They also may go on to get a graduate degree. Some of them have a double major with global studies and may want to do something internationally, particularly with an international NGO, doing some type of service work. The comm major is a little more complicated because there are different facets that you can focus on. You can focus on editing and writing, and more of an English focus with editing and writing. You can focus on media. You can focus on the relational, interpersonal skill side, and maybe you'd go into sales and marketing. So then with the comm, it comes back to what area you focused on in that comm major, and then what might be your interests. Someone may decide, I want to use my writing and editing skills in a nonprofit. And we've done that before, for example, as one path, or something on the for-profit side in corporate communications. We've had alums go and work for Steelcase and others in a PR writing capacity. So the key, I think, is sitting down one-on-one, helping our staff get to know your son or daughter, and then from that, charting a course that is going to make the most sense.
I have one last question to close out our night. Thank you, guys. We know that students really benefit from one-on-one appointments, and sometimes we often refer them to different resources then back on our website as we wrap up any one-on-one appointment that we have. So in the incidence of giving resources to students that live kind of on our website or through our services, even for students who may be hesitant to meet with us one-on-one, what are the resources that we have available that you found really resonate with students in various situations? Yoli, can you share with us?
Yeah, I would echo what Ryan said about what can I do with a major in, because it shows them both at the umbrella level, what are some of those possibilities, and then specifically Hope grads with backgrounds in those majors, the job title and where they are doing that work, because we typically update those every couple of years. So I think that's a great place to start to get some ideas, and they can use those job titles to do searches in places like Indeed.com. But that's a really good way, I think, to get them moving in that direction, to explore that.
Taking my mute button off. I think you're exactly right. And in truth, our website is really tailored to students. The primary audience of our website is the student body at Hope College. And so anytime that your student might be looking for something that is calling in career readiness, content related, send them to the Boerigter Center website at Hope College. We've got how-to guides, how to create a resume, how to prep for an interview, the what can I do with a major in, all kinds of resources there that students are welcome to use. Even Interview Stream, which is a service that students can practice interviewing virtually. Lots of great opportunities for them to kind of keep learning and keep growing on their own as well. So please know that the Boerigter website is a great resource for your students in general. That is all the time we have available tonight. I want to give one more information about one more resource called the Hope College Connection. We talked a little bit tonight about the importance of networking, the importance of your student building a group of people around them that care about them and that can help them think about, ready themselves for, and pursue their next best step. And the Hope College Connection, we strongly encourage you guys at home telling your students, go to connection.hope.edu and have your students sign up here. This is for alumni and students specifically. The alumni themselves choose to be a part of the Hope College Connection and can answer various questions, from everything from like, how did you get to the job that you're in right now, to I don't know how to choose a major. So we really encourage our current students engaging with alumni as early as possible. And this is a great resource for them to just simply sign up and get connected as early as possible. We have other resources like Handshake that we encourage your students to be using as well. All of this is again on the Boerigter website. So thank you for spending this hour with us. You can feel free to reach out to us individually, and we're happy to keep chatting via email, but we really appreciate the time you've given us tonight. Thank you to our panelists. You are geniuses as always, and we hope the best for your evening. Thank you.